torn and bound. His claws tore her apart, his love put her back together. Chapter 1. The scream that tore from Shannon's throat echoed through the dense Oregon forest, raw and primal as the claws that had just raked across her ribs. Blood seeped through her torn hiking shirt, painting crimson streaks down her pale skin as she stumbled backward against the rough bark of a Douglas fir. The creature before her was nothing like the wolves she'd studied in her wildlife biology courses. This beast stood nearly 7 feet tall on its hind legs, muscles rippling beneath midnight black fur that seemed to absorb the fading twilight. Its amber eyes held an intelligence that chilled her to the bone, and something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. "Please," Shannon whispered, her voice barely audible above her ragged breathing. Her hands pressed against the burning wounds, feeling the warmth of her own blood between her fingers. "I don't understand what's happening." The wolf creature's massive head tilted, and for a moment, the snarling ceased. Its nostrils flared, taking in her scent, and something shifted in those golden depths. The rage that had driven it to attack seemed to waver, replaced by confusion, then something that might have been anguish. Shannon had been following what she thought was an injured wolf deeper into the Cascade wilderness, her research equipment abandoned somewhere behind her in her desperate flight. She'd heard the pained howling and couldn't ignore it, her bleeding heart had always been her weakness when it came to hurt animals. Now, as darkness crept between the towering trees, she realized her compassion might cost her everything. The creature took a step back, its claws, longer than her fingers, retracting slightly. But the damage was done. Shannon could feel herself weakening, the forest floor growing soft beneath her knees as she sank down. The metallic taste of fear filled her mouth, mixing with the copper scent of blood that hung heavy in the air. "Shannon." The voice was rough, barely human, but unmistakably spoke her name. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. The creature's muzzle was moving, forming words that shouldn't be possible. "How do you?" But before she could finish the question, the wolf's form began to shift. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded into bronzed skin, and the massive frame compressed and reshaped itself. Shannon watched in horrified fascination as the beast transformed into a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell in waves to his collar and the same amber eyes that had stared at her from the wolf's face. He was completely naked, his body a map of scars that spoke of violence and survival. But it was the expression of absolute devastation on his face that made Shannon's heart skip. "Oh God," he breathed, his voice breaking as he saw the wounds his claws had left. "Shannon, I'm so sorry. I couldn't control it." "Reece?" The name fell from her lips before she could stop it, recognition flooding through her despite the impossibility of the situation. Reece Blackwood, the mysterious man who'd been watching her research station from the forest's edge for weeks. The one who'd left her small gifts on her cabin doorstep, wildflowers, perfectly carved pieces of driftwood, a crow's feather. She'd thought he was just a local recluse, maybe a trapper or a hermit who'd taken some kind of interest in her work. She'd never imagined he was the wolf she'd been trying to study. "You're hurt," he said, taking a cautious step toward her, his hands raised as if approaching a wounded animal. Which, Shannon realized with dark irony, she was. "Let me help you." "Stay back." The words came out sharper than she intended, fear overriding the strange pull she felt toward him. You attacked me. You're not even human." Pain flashed across his features, more profound than any physical wound. "I am human. Mostly." His voice was quiet, careful. "And you're my mate." Shannon's world tilted. The blood loss was making her lightheaded, but she was certain she'd heard him correctly. "You're what?" "My mate. My everything." Reece's hands clenched at his sides, and she could see him fighting for control. "I've been searching for you my entire life, Shannon. When I caught your scent 3 weeks ago, when I first saw you setting up your research equipment by Bear Creek, I knew. My wolf knew." The wounds in her side throbbed, sending waves of pain through her body. But underneath the fear and confusion, something else stirred. A recognition that went deeper than logic, older than conscious thought. She'd felt drawn to this forest, to this specific location, in ways her scientific mind couldn't explain. Her research advisor had questioned her choice to study this particular wolf pack, but Shannon had insisted. Something had called her here. "This is insane," she whispered, but even as she said it, she found herself studying the planes of his face, the way moonlight caught in his dark hair. There was something about him that felt familiar, like coming home after a long journey. "I know how it sounds." Reece took another small step closer, and Shannon noticed he was trembling. "The mate bond, it's not something we choose. It's written in our DNA, in our souls. But I should have been able to control the shift. I should never have hurt you." "The shift?" "When we transform. Usually, we have complete control, but when I smelled your blood earlier, you cut yourself on that broken branch near the creek, my wolf went crazy. It thought you were in danger, that something had hurt you. It took over before I could stop it." Shannon's hand went instinctively to the small scratch on her palm from earlier that afternoon. She'd dismissed it as nothing, just a minor hazard of working in the wilderness. But to think it had triggered this. "I need to get you help," Reece continued, his eyes never leaving her face. "The wounds are deep. If you don't get treatment soon." "I can't go to a hospital," Shannon said, surprising herself. "How would I explain claw marks? They'd want to know what attacked me." "Then let me help you. Please." His voice was raw with emotion. "I know someone who can treat you, someone who understands our world. She's helped wolves and humans before." Our world. The phrase hung between them, loaded with implications Shannon wasn't ready to face. But as another wave of dizziness washed over her, she realized she didn't have many options. "If you touch me again," she said, meeting his amber gaze with steel in her voice, "if you hurt me again, I'll find a way to make you regret it. Do you understand?" A smile ghosted across his lips, the first she'd seen from him, and it transformed his entire face. "Understood. Though if it helps, my wolf would probably let you kill us both before harming you again. The guilt is overwhelming." Shannon studied him for a long moment, weighing her limited options against the strange certainty growing in her chest. Every rational instinct told her to run, to get as far away from this man, this creature, as possible. But something deeper, something that felt older than thought itself, was telling her to trust him. "All right," she said finally. "But I want answers. All of them." Reece nodded solemnly. "You'll have them. I promise." He moved with careful, deliberate motions, never taking his eyes off her face as he approached. When he was close enough to touch her, he paused. "May I?" The formal request caught her off guard. Here was a man who could apparently turn into a massive predator, asking permission to help her with wounds he'd inflicted. The contradiction made her head spin. "Yes," she whispered. His touch was gentle, reverent almost, as he examined the tears in her shirt and the wounds beneath. His fingers were warm against her skin, and Shannon was startled by the immediate relief she felt at the contact. The pain didn't disappear, but it became manageable, as if his presence somehow muted it. "They're not as deep as I feared," he murmured, and she caught the relief in his voice. "But they need to be cleaned and bandaged properly." "Can you walk?" Shannon tested her legs, finding them steadier than expected. "I think so." "Good. Dr. Luna's cabin is about a mile north of here. She's, like me. She'll understand what happened." He stripped off his flannel shirt, when had he gotten dressed, and offered it to her. "This will help with the bleeding." As Shannon pulled the shirt around her shoulders, she caught his scent, pine and earth and something wild that made her pulse quicken despite everything that had happened. The fabric was warm from his body heat and impossibly comforting. "Reece," she said as they began walking through the darkening forest, her steps careful on the uneven ground. "What you said before, about mates. It's real," he said simply. "As real as the shift, as real as the moon above us. I've been waiting for you for 28 years, Shannon. My whole life." The certainty in his voice sent shivers down her spine. But we don't even know each other. We will. He glanced at her, and in the moonlight filtering through the canopy, his eyes seemed to glow. We have forever to learn everything about each other. If you'll let us. Forever. The word echoed in Shannon's mind as they walked deeper into the forest, toward answers she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. Behind them, the place where she'd been attacked seemed to fade into memory, but she could still feel the echo of those claws against her skin. His claws had torn her apart. But looking at the careful way Reece guided her through the darkness, the gentle strength in his hands when he'd touched her wounds, Shannon wondered if maybe, just maybe, his love could put her back together. Even if she didn't understand what that love meant yet. The forest around them was alive with sounds, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the distant call of an owl, the whisper of wind through ancient trees. But underneath it all, Shannon could swear she heard something else. A humming, almost like electricity, that seemed to pulse between her and the man walking beside her. The mate bond, her mind supplied, though she pushed the thought away. She was a scientist. She dealt in facts, in observable phenomena, in things that could be measured and tested. Not in fairy tales about werewolves and destined love. But as Reece's hand brushed hers, accidentally or deliberately, she couldn't tell, Shannon felt that strange humming intensify, and she began to wonder if maybe some truths existed beyond the reach of science. Dr. Luna's cabin appeared through the trees like something from a fairy tale, warm golden light spilling from multi-paned windows onto a wraparound porch decorated with wind chimes and hanging herbs. The scent of sage and lavender drifted on the night air, mixing with the earthier smells of the forest. "Elena," Reece called softly as they approached the front steps. "I need your help." The door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman who looked to be in her 50s with silver-streaked auburn hair braided down her back and knowing dark eyes. She wore a long cardigan over jeans, and her feet were bare despite the cool mountain air. "Reece Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent Shannon couldn't place. "I felt your distress from a mile away. And you must be Shannon." Her gaze moved to Shannon with surprising warmth. "The biologist who's been studying our territory." "How do you," Shannon began, but Dr. Luna was already moving toward them, her expression shifting to professional concern as she took in the blood-stained shirt and Shannon's pale complexion. "Inside, quickly. Both of you." She ushered them through the door into a cozy living room dominated by a stone fireplace and filled with the kind of comfortable furniture that invited you to stay a while. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with volumes on everything from veterinary medicine to folklore. "Reece, what happened?" "I lost control," he said simply, the words heavy with self-recrimination. "My wolf scented her blood and thought she was being attacked. I shifted without permission." Dr. Luna's eyebrows rose. "Without permission? That hasn't happened to you since you were a juvenile." She guided Shannon to a leather chair near the fire. "How long have you known she was your mate?" 3 weeks, Reece admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I've been trying to find the right way to approach her, the right way to explain." "And instead you nearly killed her." Dr. Luna's tone was matter-of-fact rather than accusatory, but Shannon saw Reece flinch as if she'd slapped him. "Well, what's done is done. Let's focus on healing what we can." Shannon found her voice. "Dr. Luna, I appreciate your help, but I need to understand what's happening to me. Reece says we're mates? And he turned into a wolf in front of me, and somehow I'm just sitting here having a conversation about it like it's normal." Dr. Luna smiled, the expression transforming her lined face. "Shock is a powerful thing, dear. Your mind is protecting you by allowing you to process this gradually. But to answer your question, yes, you're experiencing the mate bond. It's quite rare, actually. Most werewolves never find their true mate." "But I'm human," Shannon protested. "Are you?" Dr. Luna moved to a cabinet filled with medical supplies and began pulling out antiseptic and bandages. "Tell me, Shannon, have you always felt drawn to the wilderness? Do you find yourself most comfortable outdoors, especially during the full moon? Have you ever noticed that injured animals seem calmer around you than they should be? Shannon's mouth went dry. All of those things were true, she'd built her entire career around them. Her colleagues had always joked that she had some kind of magical touch with wildlife, that even the most skittish creatures seemed to trust her instinctively. That could be coincidence, she said weakly. Could be, Dr. Luna agreed, approaching with her medical supplies. Or it could be that you're a dormant shifter. Sometimes the gene skips generations, lies quiet until the right trigger awakens it. The right trigger? Meeting your mate, Reece said softly. He'd been standing by the window, giving them space, but now he turned to face her. The bond can awaken abilities that were sleeping. Shannon felt the world tilt again. You're saying I might become a werewolf? Not might, Dr. Luna said gently, beginning to clean Shannon's wounds with practiced efficiency. Will. The question is when, and how smoothly the transition goes. With Reece as your mate to guide you through it, you have a much better chance of maintaining your sanity and control. The antiseptic stung, but Shannon barely noticed. Her entire worldview was crumbling and rebuilding itself in the space of minutes. This is insane. People don't just turn into wolves. There has to be a scientific explanation. There is, Dr. Luna said. We just don't fully understand it yet. Genetics, quantum physics, cellular restructuring at the molecular level, the science exists. We simply haven't caught up to it. Elena has a PhD in biochemistry, Reece added. She's been studying our kind for decades, trying to bridge the gap between what we know through experience and what can be proven in a laboratory. Shannon looked between them, these two people who were discussing the impossible as casually as commenting on the weather. And you're sure? About the mate bond? Watch, Dr. Luna said. She pressed a little harder with the antiseptic, and Shannon hissed in pain. Immediately, Reece was beside her chair, his hand on her shoulder, his presence somehow making the sting fade to manageable levels. The bond allows you to share strength, to heal each other, to communicate in ways that go beyond words, Dr. Luna explained as she began bandaging the wounds. It's already working between you two, even though Shannon hasn't fully accepted it yet. Shannon stared down at Reece's hand on her shoulder, feeling the warmth that seemed to flow from his touch directly into her bloodstream. How is that possible? Love, Dr. Luna said simply. The most powerful force in any universe, magical or mundane. But we don't love each other, Shannon protested. We don't even know each other. Reece's hand tightened slightly on her shoulder. The bond creates the capacity for love, the framework for it. What we build within that framework is up to us. He met her eyes. I won't force anything on you, Shannon. The bond exists whether we acknowledge it or not, but how we choose to honor it, that's our decision. Dr. Luna finished the bandaging and stepped back to survey her work. The wounds will heal faster than normal now that the bond has been acknowledged, even partially. You should be fully recovered within a week. A week? Shannon touched the bandages gingerly. These should take weeks to heal properly. Welcome to the benefits of werewolf genetics, Dr. Luna said with a smile. Enhanced healing is just the beginning. Increased strength, improved senses, extended lifespan, the bond will awaken all of it gradually. Shannon's head was spinning again, but this time it wasn't from blood loss. I need time to process this. All of it. Of course you do, Dr. Luna agreed. Reece, why don't you take Shannon back to her research station? She'll be more comfortable in familiar surroundings. Actually, Shannon said, surprising herself, I'd rather. Could I stay here tonight? I don't think I'm ready to be alone yet. Something warm flashed in Reece's eyes. I'll stay too, if that's all right. On the couch. Just in case you need anything. Dr. Luna nodded approvingly. I have a guest room Shannon can use. And Reece, you know you're always welcome here. As Dr. Luna showed Shannon to a small but comfortable bedroom filled with handmade quilts and the lingering scent of lavender, Shannon caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror above the dresser. Her hair was tangled, her face pale, and dried blood still streaked her arms. But her eyes, there was something different about her eyes. They seemed brighter, more alert, as if she was seeing the world through a new lens. The first shift usually happens within 48 hours of the bond being acknowledged, Dr. Luna said quietly from the doorway. It's frightening, but remember, you won't be alone. Reece will be with you every step of the way. What if I don't want to shift? What if I want to stay human? Dr. Luna's expression was kind but sad. I'm afraid that's not an option anymore, dear. The process has already begun. But I promise you, being a werewolf isn't the curse mythology makes it out to be. It's a gift, the chance to experience the world in ways humans never could imagine. After Dr. Luna left her alone, Shannon sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. They looked the same as always, but she could swear she felt something moving beneath the skin, some kind of energy or potential waiting to be released. Through the thin walls of the cabin, she could hear Reece and Dr. Luna talking in low voices. She caught fragments of their conversation, never seen a bond manifest so quickly. She's stronger than she knows. The pack will have questions. The pack. Shannon closed her eyes. Of course there was a pack. Reece wouldn't be the only werewolf in these mountains. A soft knock on the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Shannon? It's me. Can I come in? She opened the door to find Reece holding a steaming mug and wearing a concerned expression. Elena made you some tea. It is herbs that will help you sleep and ease the transition symptoms. Shannon accepted the mug gratefully, inhaling the complex aroma of chamomile, valerian, and something else she couldn't identify. What kind of symptoms? Restlessness, heightened senses, strange dreams, he said, settling carefully on the chair by the window. Your body is preparing for the change. It can be uncomfortable. Reece, Shannon said, studying his face in the lamplight. Earlier, when you shifted, you looked like you were in pain. The shift doesn't hurt, he said quietly. But losing control does. Knowing I hurt you. He shook his head. I've been shifting for 15 years, Shannon. Since I was 13. I should have been able to stop it. Why didn't you tell me what you were before? When you started leaving gifts at my cabin? A rueful smile crossed his features. How exactly does that conversation go? Hi, I'm a werewolf, and I think you might be my soulmate? I was hoping to build some kind of foundation first, to let you get to know me as a man before. Before revealing you were a monster? His face went very still. Is that what you think I am? Shannon sipped the tea, buying herself time to think. The question was fair, was he a monster? He'd attacked her, yes, but he'd been trying to protect her, in his mind. He'd immediately sought help for her injuries. He'd been nothing but gentle and respectful since revealing his true nature. No, she said finally. I don't think you're a monster. Dangerous, maybe. Definitely not human in the way I understand it. But not a monster. Relief flooded his features. Thank you for that. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Shannon drinking the surprisingly soothing tea while Reece watched the shadows play across the walls. Finally, she spoke again. What happens now? With us, I mean. That depends on you, he said. The bond exists regardless of what we do about it. But whether we explore it, whether we build something together, that's your choice. And if I choose not to? Pain flashed across his features, quickly suppressed. Then I'll respect that. I'll help you through the transition, make sure you're safe and in control of your new abilities. But I won't push for more than you're willing to give. Something in his voice made Shannon's chest tighten. That would hurt you. Yes, he said simply. But your happiness matters more than my pain. The honesty in his words, the quiet acceptance, did something strange to Shannon's heart. This man, this werewolf, was prepared to sacrifice his own happiness for hers. It was the kind of selfless love she'd read about in books but never expected to encounter in real life. I'm scared, she admitted. Of me? Of this. Of changing into something I don't understand. Of losing myself. She set down the empty mug and looked directly at him. Of caring about you and having it not be real, just some supernatural bond forcing emotions I don't actually feel. Reece was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. The bond doesn't create false emotions, he said finally. It creates the potential for true ones. What you're feeling, the pull, the recognition, the trust that led you to let me help you tonight, that's real. The bond just made it possible. How can you be sure? Because I've felt the difference. I've cared about other people, Shannon. I've even loved, in my way. But what I feel when I look at you, it's like the difference between a candle and the sun. The intensity in his voice made Shannon's breath catch. She could see the truth of it in his eyes, the depth of feeling that went far beyond anything supernatural compulsion could create. I need time, she said. You have it. All the time you need. And I need honesty. Complete honesty. About what I'm becoming, about your world, about what being your mate would mean. Done. And I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't try to protect me from the hard truths. I'm a scientist, Reece. I can handle reality, even when it's difficult. What I can't handle is being lied to or having information withheld for my own good. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. I promise. Though fair warning, some of the truths about our world are harder to accept than the existence of werewolves. Such as? Vampires are real. So are witches, fae, and a handful of other supernatural species. We have our own governments, our own laws, our own territories. There's an entire shadow world existing alongside the human one. Shannon blinked. Vampires. Of course there are vampires. The good news is that most of them are nothing like the movies portray. The bad news is that some of them are worse. Despite everything, Shannon found herself almost smiling. What else? Well, there's the fact that werewolf politics make human politics look simple and straightforward. Pack hierarchies, territorial disputes, the Council of Alphas. He shook his head. It's complicated. And I'll be part of all that? As my mate, you'd have a position of considerable importance in the pack structure. But Shannon, you should know, if you choose to accept the bond, if you choose me, there's no going back. The connection is permanent. The weight of that settled over her like a blanket. Permanent. For a woman who'd spent her adult life avoiding serious commitments, who'd chosen a career that let her move from project to project without putting down roots, the word was terrifying. But as she looked at Reece, at the careful hope in his eyes and the patient way he waited for her response, Shannon realized that for the first time in her life, permanent didn't sound like a prison sentence. It sounded like coming home. I should let you rest, Reece said, rising from the chair. The tea will help you sleep, and you'll need your strength for tomorrow. What happens tomorrow? We start your education. Elena will want to run some tests, see how quickly your abilities are developing. And I'll begin teaching you about pack dynamics, about our history. He paused at the door. And if you're ready, I'd like to introduce you to my family. After he left, Shannon lay in the unfamiliar bed listening to the sounds of the forest night. But what should have been soothing, the owl calls and cricket songs she'd grown to love during her weeks of research, now seemed amplified, as if someone had turned up the volume on the entire world. She could hear Dr. Luna and Reece talking in the living room, their voices clear despite the distance. Enhanced hearing, she realized. It was already beginning. She's handling it well, Dr. Luna was saying. Better than most. She's remarkable, Reece's voice was soft with wonder. Even terrified and hurt, she was thinking clearly, asking the right questions. The bond chose well. She'll be good for you, Reece. And for the pack. There was a pause, then Reece spoke again, his voice heavy with uncertainty. What if she can't accept it? What if when she fully understands what being my mate means, the politics, the danger, the responsibility, she decides it's too much. Then you'll respect her choice and find a way to live with a broken heart, Dr. Luna said gently. But I don't think that's going to happen. Did you see the way she looked at you when you promised her honesty? She's already falling, Reece. She just doesn't know it yet. Shannon's cheeks flushed in the darkness. Was it that obvious? She'd prided herself on being good at hiding her emotions, at maintaining professional objectivity even in personal situations. But apparently, whatever was happening between her and Reece was too strong to mask. Sleep, when it finally came, brought dreams unlike any Shannon had ever experienced. She ran through moonlit forests on 4 legs, her paws silent on the pine needle carpet. The world exploded with scents, every flower, every small creature, every tree distinct and meaningful. She felt powerful, wild, free in ways her human form never allowed. But the most vivid part of the dream was the presence beside her. A larger wolf with midnight fur and amber eyes, matching her pace perfectly, their movements synchronized as if they'd been running together for years. When she turned to look at him, Shannon felt such overwhelming rightness, such perfect completion, that she woke with tears on her cheeks. Dawn was just beginning to filter through the cabin's windows, painting everything in soft gold and rose. Shannon could hear movement in the kitchen, Dr. Luna starting coffee, the gentle clatter of dishes. And underneath it all, that strange humming sensation had intensified, like electricity in her veins. She rose carefully, testing her wounds. The pain was significantly less than it had been the night before, and when she lifted her shirt to examine the bandages, she was startled to see that the claw marks had already begun to close. A soft knock interrupted her examination. "Shannon?" "It's Elena. How are you feeling?" "Different," Shannon admitted, opening the door to find Dr. Luna holding a steaming cup of coffee and wearing a knowing smile. "I imagine so. The dreams were vivid, weren't they?" Shannon accepted the coffee gratefully. "How did you know?" "First shift dreams always are. Your subconscious is preparing your mind for the change." Dr. Luna settled on the chair Reece had occupied the night before. "Tell me what you experienced." As Shannon described her dream, Dr. Luna nodded approvingly. "Excellent. No fear, no sense of being trapped or losing yourself. That's a very good sign. Some people fight their wolf nature, see it as an invasion rather than an expansion of who they are. You seem to be embracing it instinctively." "It felt right," Shannon said, surprising herself with the admission. "More right than I've ever felt in my human form." "That suggests your wolf nature was suppressed rather than absent. You've probably been fighting it your whole life without realizing it." Dr. Luna studied Shannon's face. "Tell me about your childhood. Were you always drawn to the outdoors? Did you have trouble sleeping during full moons?" The questions unlocked a flood of memories Shannon had never connected before. Camping trips where she'd insisted on sleeping outside under the stars, even as a small child. Restless nights when the moon was full, when she'd pace her room until her parents let her go for walks. The way other children's pets had always gravitated toward her, sometimes ignoring their owners entirely. "My parents used to joke that I was raised by wolves," Shannon said with a shaky laugh. "They had no idea how literal that might be." "The dormant gene often manifests in small ways throughout childhood," Dr. Luna explained. "Enhanced intuition about animals, unusual comfort in wilderness settings, difficulty with traditional indoor activities. Did you ever feel like you didn't quite fit in human society?" Shannon's throat tightened. That feeling of otherness had followed her through school, through relationships, through her entire adult life. She'd always attributed it to being more introverted than her peers, more interested in wildlife than people. But now, "It wasn't that I didn't fit," she said slowly. "It was that I was always looking for something I couldn't name. Like there was a piece of myself missing." "And now?" Shannon considered the question, taking inventory of how she felt in this moment. The restless energy that had driven her to change research projects every few years, to move from place to place seeking something she could never define, was gone. In its place was a sense of rightness, of being exactly where she belonged. "Now I think I've found it," she said quietly. Dr. Luna smiled. "The mate bond has a way of completing us in ways we didn't even know we needed. Shall we go see how Reece is doing? He barely slept last night, he was too worried about you." They found Reece on the front porch, sitting on the steps with a cup of coffee and staring out at the forest. He'd changed into fresh clothes, jeans and a Henley that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, but there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. "How are you feeling?" he asked immediately, rising as they approached. "Better. Much better." Shannon was acutely aware of his nearness, of the way her pulse quickened when he smiled. "Dr. Luna says the first shift usually happens within 48 hours. Are you ready for that?" The question was serious, loaded with concern for her well-being. Shannon appreciated that he didn't try to minimize what she was facing or assure her it would be easy. "I don't know if anyone can be ready for something like that," she said honestly. "But I'm not as terrified as I was last night." "Good. Terror makes the shift harder to control." Reece's expression was thoughtful. "Shannon, there's something I need to tell you. About the pack." Dr. Luna excused herself to go inside, leaving them alone on the porch. Shannon sensed this was going to be one of those difficult truths Reece had promised her. "My father is the pack alpha," Reece said without preamble. "Marcus Blackwood. He's a complicated man. Traditional in his views about pack hierarchy and the role of mates." "Meaning?" "Meaning he's going to have very specific expectations about how you integrate into pack life. He'll expect you to defer to him as alpha, to accept your place in the hierarchy without question." Reece's jaw tightened. "He may also test you, to see if you're strong enough to be the mate of his heir." Shannon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "His heir? You're going to be alpha?" "Eventually. When my father steps down or—" He shrugged. "It's the way pack succession works. The alpha's eldest son typically inherits the position, assuming he's strong enough to hold it. And if he's not? Then someone challenges him for it. Pack leadership isn't hereditary in the human sense, it goes to whoever is strongest, most capable of protecting the pack." Reece's amber eyes met hers. "Which means that as my mate, you'd eventually become Pack Luna. The alpha female." The title hit Shannon like a physical blow. Luna, like the moon, like the celestial body that governed werewolf transformations. The weight of responsibility implicit in that role was staggering. "I can't," she said immediately. "Reece, I don't know anything about being a werewolf, let alone leading other werewolves. I can't be responsible for people's lives." "You won't be alone," he said gently. "I'll be there, and Elena, and others who can teach you. But Shannon, you need to understand, this isn't optional if you accept the mate bond. The pack comes with the territory." Shannon stood abruptly, needing to pace, to move, to think. The peaceful morning suddenly felt oppressive, full of expectations she wasn't prepared to meet. "How many?" she asked. "How many what? How many wolves in your pack? How many people who would be depending on me to know what I'm doing?" 37, Reece said quietly. "Families, Shannon. Children. Elderly wolves who need protection and guidance. 37 lives." Shannon's research work had always been solitary, her responsibility extending only to herself and her data. The idea of being accountable for the well-being of an entire community was overwhelming. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she asked. "What if I can't shift properly, or I can't handle the politics, or I make decisions that get people hurt?" Reece stood and moved toward her, his movements careful and non-threatening. "Then we'll deal with those challenges as they come. Together." He stopped just within arm's reach, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Shannon, I know this is a lot. I know it's more than you bargained for when you came to these mountains to study wolves." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I came here to observe wolf behavior from a safe distance. Now I'm going to become one." The irony isn't lost on me, Reece said with a small smile. But I want you to know, whatever happens, whatever you decide about us, I'll make sure you're prepared for your new life. You won't face any of this alone. The sincerity in his voice, the absolute certainty that he would keep that promise, made something tight in Shannon's chest loosen. She might not know what she was becoming, but she wouldn't have to figure it out by herself. Tell me about your family, she said. All of them. I want to know what I'm potentially getting into. Relief flickered across Reece's features. My father, Marcus, is 63 and has been alpha for 35 years. He's fair but demanding, traditional but not unreasonable. My mother died when I was 17, hunting accident. Shannon's heart clenched. I'm sorry. Thank you. I have a younger sister, Lydia. She's 25, recently mated to her childhood friend Derek. They're expecting their first pup in the spring. His expression softened. She's going to love you. Lydia has always said the pack needs more women who aren't afraid to speak their minds. And the others? My father's beta is Cole Morrison, he's like a second father to me. His mate Sarah runs the pack's educational programs for the children. There's my cousin Jake, who handles security, and Elena, who serves as our healer and advisor. Reece's tone grew more serious. There are also some members who aren't completely happy with my father's leadership style. They think he's too accommodating to human authorities, too willing to hide rather than assert our strength. Potential challengers? One in particular. Victor Kane. He's been pushing for more aggressive policies, more open conflict with humans who encroach on our territory. Reece's eyes darkened. He's also been questioning whether I'm strong enough to eventually lead, suggesting that my reluctance to take a mate shows weakness. Shannon felt a chill of understanding. So me showing up, accepting the bond, that strengthens your position. Yes, Reece said honestly. But Shannon, that's not why I want you. The political benefits are secondary too. I know, she interrupted, and realized she did know. Whatever was growing between them went far deeper than pack politics or supernatural bonds. But I needed to understand all the implications. They were quiet for a moment, the weight of everything settling between them. Then Shannon spoke again. When do I meet them? Today, if you're ready. There's a pack gathering this evening, originally called to discuss territorial boundaries with a neighboring pack. But word will have spread about last night, about you. They'll want to meet the woman who's captured their future alpha's heart. Shannon's pulse quickened with nerves and anticipation in equal measure. No pressure at all. Reece's smile was rueful. I wish I could make this easier for you. But Werewolf Society doesn't really do gradual introductions. It's all right, Shannon said, surprising herself by meaning it. I'd rather face it all at once than have it hanging over my head. Dr. Luna emerged from the cabin carrying a medical bag. Shannon, I'd like to run a few tests before this evening. Blood work, sensory assessments, basic physical measurements. We need to establish a baseline before your first shift. As they walked back toward the cabin, Shannon caught sight of her reflection in the window again. The woman looking back at her had the same face, the same dark hair and green eyes. But there was something different in her posture, a new confidence in the set of her shoulders. She was still Shannon Morrison, wildlife biologist. But she was also becoming something else, something stronger, wilder, more connected to the natural world than she'd ever imagined possible. And despite her fears about pack politics and alpha responsibilities, despite the enormous changes ahead of her, Shannon realized she was excited to discover exactly what that something else might be. The mate bond hummed between her and Reece as they entered the cabin together, and for the first time since this all began, Shannon didn't fight the sensation. She embraced it. Chapter 2. Dr. Luna's tests revealed changes that both fascinated and unnerved Shannon. Her reflexes had sharpened dramatically overnight, her hearing had expanded beyond normal human ranges, And her blood work showed elevated levels of proteins that Elena described as pre-shift markers. Your body is preparing itself for the transformation, Dr. Luna explained as she labeled the blood samples. Based on these readings, I'd estimate you'll shift within the next 24 hours. Shannon flexed her fingers, noting how her nails seemed slightly longer, more pointed than they'd been yesterday. Will it hurt? The first time is intense, Reece said carefully. He'd remained nearby throughout the examination, his presence somehow making the clinical atmosphere more bearable. But it's not exactly pain. It's more like every cell in your body is being rewritten. That's not particularly reassuring. I'll be with you, he said simply. My wolf can help yours find its way. Dr. Luna packed away her equipment with satisfied efficiency. You have a few hours before the pack gathering. I suggest you use that time to practice accessing your enhanced senses. The more familiar you become with your new abilities before the shift, the smoother the transition will be. They spent the morning in the forest behind Elena's cabin, with Reece teaching Shannon to consciously engage her heightened senses. At first, it was overwhelming. Every smell, every sound, every texture seemed amplified to an almost unbearable degree. Close your eyes, Reece instructed, his voice patient as Shannon winced at the cacophony of forest sounds. Don't try to process everything at once. Focus on one sense at a time. Shannon followed his guidance, learning to filter the sensory input instead of being flooded by it. Gradually, the chaos resolved into a symphony of information. She could distinguish between different types of birds by their scent alone, could hear the heartbeats of small creatures in the underbrush, could taste the approaching weather change on the air. This is incredible, she breathed, opening her eyes to find Reece watching her with undisguised pride. I can smell everything, the oak trees, the creek 2 miles away, that deer that passed through here yesterday. And, he prompted, stepping closer. Shannon inhaled more deeply, her enhanced senses automatically cataloging everything about him. Pine soap, coffee, something wild that's purely you. She paused, her cheeks flushing as she caught another scent. And desire. Reece's eyes darkened. The bond makes it impossible to hide our emotions from each other. You smell like wildflowers and curiosity and... He moved closer, his voice dropping. Like home. The space between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Shannon found herself drawn forward, pulled by something deeper than conscious thought. When Reece reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face, she didn't pull away. Shannon, he said softly, her name a question and a plea. She answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but when Shannon's arms wound around his neck, it deepened into something that felt like claiming. Reece's hand settled at her waist, pulling her closer, and Shannon marveled at how perfectly she fit against him, how right this felt despite everything that had changed in her world. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Shannon could hear the rapid rhythm of Reece's heartbeat, could smell the shift in his scent that spoke of arousal and something deeper, love, her newly awakened instincts supplied. Wow, she whispered. Yeah, Reece agreed, his voice rough. Wow. They spent the rest of the morning exploring her new abilities, but underneath the practical lessons was a current of awareness that hadn't existed before. Every accidental touch, every shared glance, seemed charged with possibility. By afternoon, Shannon felt more in control of her enhanced senses, but a new restlessness had taken hold. Her skin felt too tight, her human form somehow constraining in ways it never had been before. Pre-shift anxiety, Dr. Luna diagnosed when they returned to the cabin for lunch. Your wolf is getting impatient to emerge. We should head to Packland soon. Will they all be able to tell? Shannon asked, touching the bandages that covered her claw marks. That I'm not fully turned yet? Oh yes, Reece said. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Seeing you in transition, seeing how well you're handling it, will actually work in your favor. It shows strength. An hour later, they were driving deeper into the Cascade Mountains in Reece's pickup truck, following winding dirt roads that seemed to lead nowhere. Shannon's enhanced senses picked up the increasing density of wolf scent as they climbed higher into the mountains. "How big is your territory?" she asked. "About 200 square miles," Reece replied. "Most of it's federal forest land, but the pack has legal ownership of the core area, about 50 square miles where our main settlement is located." "Settlement? You were expecting caves and campfires?" he asked with amusement. "We're werewolves, not primitives. The pack lives in a community that looks like any other mountain town. Houses, businesses, a school for the children." As they crested a ridge, Shannon got her first glimpse of Blackwood territory. Nestled in a valley surrounded by towering evergreens was indeed what looked like a small town, wooden buildings that blended seamlessly with the forest, winding paths instead of paved roads, and everywhere the sense of a community that had grown organically rather than being planned. "It's beautiful," Shannon said, and meant it. "Wait until you see it with wolf senses," Reece said. "The way scent trails tell you where everyone's been, who's visited who, what emotions they were feeling when they passed by. The entire pack's history is written in scent markers throughout the territory." They parked in front of a large cabin that could only be the Alpha's residence. Before Shannon could get nervous, the front door opened and a woman emerged who could only be Reece's sister. She had the same dark hair and amber eyes, the same strong features, but where Reece was carefully controlled, Lydia radiated warmth and energy. "Finally!" Lydia exclaimed, bounding down the steps with an enthusiasm that made Shannon smile despite her nerves. "I've been dying to meet the woman who has my stoic brother walking into trees because he's too distracted to pay attention to where he's going." "Lydia," Reece warned, but his tone was fond. "What?" "It's true. Derek saw you walk straight into that low branch yesterday because you were thinking about her." Lydia turned to Shannon with a grin. "I'm Lydia Blackwood Harrison. Soon to be just Harrison once Derek stops being traditional about keeping his name." Shannon found herself smiling back. Lydia's personality was infectious, and her obvious affection for her brother was endearing. "Shannon Morrison. And I'm sorry for causing the tree-walking incident." "Don't be sorry, it's the most entertaining thing that's happened around here in months." Lydia's expression grew more serious. "How are you feeling?" "Reece told us about the attack." "Better. Dr. Luna says I should be fully healed within a week." "And the first shift?" "Soon," Shannon said, surprised by her own calm acceptance. "Probably tonight." Lydia nodded approvingly. "Good. The sooner you transform, the sooner you'll feel like yourself again. The in-between stage is the worst part." The front door opened again, and Shannon found herself facing Marcus Blackwood for the first time. If Reece would someday grow into the kind of leader who commanded respect through quiet strength, his father was the kind who did it through sheer presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver-streaked dark hair and the most intense amber eyes Shannon had ever seen. "Shannon Morrison," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Welcome to Blackwood territory." "Thank you, Alpha Blackwood," Shannon replied, instinctively straightening her spine. Something in his bearing demanded formality. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly, and Shannon caught the brief flash of approval in his expression. "You may call me Marcus. Reece has told me about your situation. How are you adapting?" "Better than I expected," Shannon said honestly. "Though I suspect the real tests are still ahead of me." "Indeed they are." Marcus studied her with the intensity of a predator evaluating potential prey. "Being the mate of my heir is not a position to be taken lightly. The pack's safety and prosperity may someday depend on your decisions." "Father," Reece said, a warning in his tone. "It's all right," Shannon said, meeting Marcus's gaze steadily. "He's right to be concerned. I won't pretend I'm prepared for this responsibility. But I'm a fast learner, and I don't run from challenges." Something that might have been a smile ghosted across Marcus's features. "We shall see. Come, the pack is gathering. It's time you met your new family." The meeting area was a large clearing behind the main buildings, surrounded by amphitheater-style seating carved into the natural slope of the hillside. As they approached, Shannon could see wolves, some in human form, some in wolf form, some in various stages of partial transformation, arranged in small groups throughout the space. The conversations quieted as they entered the clearing, and Shannon felt the weight of dozens of gazes evaluating her. Her enhanced senses picked up a complex web of sense, curiosity, approval, skepticism, and from a few individuals, outright hostility. "Pack family," Marcus called, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. "I present Shannon Morrison, mate to my son Reece." A murmur ran through the assembled wolves, and Shannon caught fragments of whispered conversations. "She smells human." "Not shifted yet." "Reece chose well." "Shannon is in transition," Marcus continued. "She will undergo her first shift tonight, with Reece as her guide. I expect you all to welcome her as befits her position." Most of the pack members approached with genuine warmth, introducing themselves and their families. Shannon met Cole Morrison, Marcus's beta, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands who immediately put her at ease. His mate Sarah was a teacher who peppered Shannon with questions about her research background with obvious enthusiasm. But not everyone was welcoming. Victor Kane made his displeasure clear from the moment they were introduced. He was younger than Marcus but older than Reece, with the kind of aggressive energy that made Shannon's new instincts prickle with unease. "So this is the human who's captured our future alpha's attention," he said, his tone making it clear he didn't consider this a positive development. "Tell me, Miss Morrison, what exactly qualifies you to be Luna of this pack?" "Victor," Cole warned, but Shannon held up a hand. "It's a fair question," she said, keeping her voice level despite the challenge in Victor's tone. "The honest answer is that nothing qualifies me yet. I have a lot to learn, and I intend to learn it. But I also bring skills that might benefit the pack: research experience, scientific knowledge, and familiarity with human wildlife management systems." "Pretty words," Victor said dismissively. "But when predators threaten our territory, when humans encroach on our lands, will your research skills protect our children? If they help me understand the threats better, anticipate them, find solutions that don't require violence, then yes, they might." Shannon stepped closer, meeting his aggressive posture with calm determination. "But if violence becomes necessary to protect the pack, you'll find I'm not as helpless as I might appear." Victor's eyes narrowed. Bold words from someone who can't even shift yet. The tension in the clearing ratcheted up several degrees. Shannon could feel Reece moving closer, ready to intervene, but she knew instinctively that this was a challenge she needed to face herself. "You're right," she said. "I can't shift yet. But I survived an unprovoked attack by a shifted werewolf yesterday, and I'm still here. I'd say that shows some promise." A few appreciative chuckles came from the watching pack members, and Shannon saw Victor's jaw tighten with anger. "Surviving an attack and being strong enough to lead are two different things," he said. "True," Shannon agreed. "But I'm not trying to lead anyone right now. I'm trying to find my place in this community, learn what I need to know, and prove that I'm worthy of the trust you're all being asked to place in me. If you want to test my strength, I'm willing to be tested. But I won't be bullied or intimidated." The standoff might have continued, but at that moment, Shannon's entire body seized with a pain unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She gasped, doubling over as every nerve ending seemed to catch fire simultaneously. "Shannon!" Reece was beside her instantly, his hands supporting her as another wave of agony crashed through her system. "It's starting," Dr. Luna said, appearing at her other side. "The first shift is beginning." Through the haze of pain, Shannon was dimly aware of the pack members forming a circle around her, their voices rising in what sounded like a chant or song. But all her focus was on the sensation of her body attempting to tear itself apart and rebuild itself into something new. "I've got you," Reece whispered against her ear. "Just breathe. Don't fight it. Let your wolf come." Shannon tried to follow his guidance, but the pain was overwhelming. She felt her bones beginning to stretch and reshape, felt her muscles tearing and reforming. When she looked down at her hands, she saw claws emerging from her fingertips. And through it all, the pack continued their ancient song, welcoming her transformation with voices that seemed to call to something deep in her changing DNA. The pain reached a crescendo that made Shannon scream, her voice breaking into something that was part human cry, part wolf howl. Her spine arched impossibly as her ribcage expanded, her limbs lengthened, and thick auburn fur began sprouting across her skin. "That's it," Reece's voice came from somewhere far away, though she could feel his hand still steadying her. "Let go, Shannon. Stop trying to stay human." The moment she released her death grip on her human form, everything changed. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else, a wild, electric energy that surged through her transforming body like lightning. She felt powerful, alive in ways she'd never imagined possible. Her senses exploded outward. She could smell every individual pack member, could hear heartbeats and breathing patterns, could taste emotions on the air. The pack's song wasn't just sound anymore, it was welcome, acceptance, belonging made audible. When the transformation finally completed, Shannon found herself on 4 legs, looking up at the world from a wolf's perspective. Everything was sharper, clearer, more vivid than it had ever been in human form. Colors were different, blues and yellows muted, but reds and greens more intense than she'd known they could be. But it was the sense that truly overwhelmed her. Every pack member had a unique signature, and she could read their emotional states as clearly as words on a page. Fear from some of the younger wolves, pride from the elders, curiosity from the children, and from Reece, love so intense it made her newly transformed heart race. She turned toward him and saw that he had partially shifted as well. His face was more angular, his features sharper, and his amber eyes held golden flecks that seemed to glow in the firelight. When he knelt beside her, she could see the barely contained wolf just beneath his human surface. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly, reaching out to stroke her fur. Shannon tried to respond and was startled when only a soft whine emerged. She was still herself inside this wolf body, but the mechanics of communication were entirely different. "It takes practice," Dr. Loomis said, approaching slowly. "Your vocal cords have changed completely. Most new shifters need several days to learn how to speak in wolf form." The pack song faded into comfortable silence, and Marcus stepped forward. "Welcome, Shannon Blackwood," he said formally. "The moon recognizes you as one of our own." Blackwood. Shannon's wolf ears perked up at the name change. In pack culture, taking a mate's name apparently happened automatically upon first shift. "She's magnificent," Lydia said with obvious delight. "Look at that coat, I've never seen that shade of auburn before." Shannon became aware that the pack members were studying her with intense interest. She supposed she was something of a curiosity, an adult human who had shifted for the first time. Most pack children underwent their first transformation during adolescence. Victor Kane remained at the edge of the circle, his expression unreadable. The shift went well, he acknowledged grudgingly. But shifting and controlling the wolf are different skills. As if summoned by his words, Shannon suddenly felt her wolf nature surge forward, overwhelming her human consciousness. The world narrowed to instinct and sensation. She could smell a rabbit in the nearby bushes, could hear its rapid heartbeat calling to her predatory nature. Before she could think about what she was doing, Shannon was moving, her powerful legs carrying her toward the tree line in pursuit of prey. Behind her, she heard voices calling her name, but they seemed distant and unimportant compared to the thrill of the hunt. She was fast, faster than she'd ever been in human form, but she'd underestimated how different running on 4 legs would be. When she tried to make a sharp turn around a large boulder, her inexperience showed. She miscalculated the angle and crashed into the rock face, yelping as she tumbled to the ground. Before she could get back up, Reece was there in full wolf form, larger than her, his midnight black fur making him nearly invisible in the shadows. He positioned himself between her and the rabbit, his posture clearly communicating that the hunt was over. Shannon's wolf bristled at the interference, and she found herself snarling at him before she could stop herself. The sound shocked her back to human awareness. She was challenging her mate, the future alpha, in front of the entire pack. Reece's response was swift and decisive. He pinned her gently but firmly, his larger frame holding her in place while he gave a low, warning growl that spoke directly to her wolf's understanding of pack hierarchy. The message was clear: submit or face real consequences. Shannon's human mind rebelled against the dominance display, but her wolf understood perfectly. This wasn't about control or abuse, it was about safety and pack structure. A wolf who couldn't be controlled by their mate or alpha was a danger to everyone. She went limp beneath him, exposing her throat in the ultimate gesture of submission. Reece immediately released her, nuzzling her neck gently in approval and comfort. When they returned to the clearing, moving at a much more sedate pace, Shannon could see a mixture of expressions on the pack members' faces. Some looked concerned about her loss of control, others seemed impressed that she'd submitted to correction so quickly. First shift wolves often struggle with control, Marcus said diplomatically. With proper training, Shannon will learn to balance her human consciousness with her wolf instincts. And if she doesn't? Victor asked pointedly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Shannon knew that everyone was watching her, waiting to see how she would respond to this public questioning of her fitness to be Pack Luna. Instead of shifting back to human form to answer, Shannon did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She approached Victor in wolf form, her posture confident but not aggressive. When she was close enough, she sat back on her haunches and looked directly into his eyes. Then she shifted back to human form. The transformation was smoother this time, though still exhausting. When it was complete, Shannon stood naked in the clearing, completely unself-conscious in the way that pack culture apparently demanded. You want to know if I can control my wolf, she said, her voice steady despite the lingering pain of transformation. The answer is that I'm learning. Tonight was my first shift, and yes, I lost control for a moment. But I also recognized my mistake, accepted correction from my mate, and chose to return to the pack rather than continue hunting. She took a step closer to Victor. You're testing me, and I understand why. You need to know if I'm strong enough to someday help lead this pack. But strength isn't just about never making mistakes, it's about learning from them quickly and adapting. Pretty words, Victor said, but his tone was less hostile than before. We'll see how you handle real challenges. I look forward to them, Shannon replied calmly. Dr. Luna approached with a blanket, wrapping it around Shannon's shoulders. That was remarkably well done for a first shift, she said approvingly. Most new wolves take weeks to achieve that level of control. As the pack gathering began to disperse, family groups heading back to their homes for the night, Shannon found herself surrounded by well-wishers and new pack mates eager to introduce themselves properly. An elderly woman named Agnes pressed a jar of homemade honey into her hands. For your throat, she said kindly. The first few shifts always leave you hoarse. A group of teenagers approached shyly, their eyes wide with curiosity. What was it like? One of them asked. Being human for so long and then shifting? Shannon considered the question carefully. Like waking up from a dream I didn't know I was having, she said finally. Like finding a part of myself I'd been missing my whole life. The teenagers nodded solemnly, as if her words confirmed something they'd always suspected about the world. By the time the clearing had mostly emptied, Shannon was exhausted. The repeated transformations had drained her more than any physical activity she'd ever attempted. But underneath the fatigue was a deep satisfaction, a sense of rightness that went beyond words. How do you feel? Reece asked, wrapping an arm around her shoulders as they walked toward his father's cabin. Different, Shannon said, leaning into his warmth. But also more like myself than I've ever felt before. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, he assured her. You found your true form. Marcus was waiting for them on the porch, his expression thoughtful. You handled yourself well tonight, he said without preamble. The pack saw strength, adaptability, and wisdom. Those are qualities that will serve you well as Luna. I still have so much to learn, Shannon said. True. But you have the foundation for leadership, the ability to admit when you don't know something and the determination to learn what you need to know. Marcus's amber eyes, so like his son's, were warm with approval. Welcome to the family, Shannon. Later, as Shannon lay in the guest room of the Alpha's residence, she could hear the night sounds of the pack territory through the open window. Wolves calling to each other across the valley, the rustle of nocturnal creatures, the whisper of wind through ancient trees. But more than that, she could feel the pack itself, 37 individual lives connected by bonds of loyalty and shared purpose. She was part of that network now, one thread in a tapestry that had been weaving itself for generations. The mate bond hummed between her and Reece, even through the walls separating them. She could sense his contentment, his relief that her first shift had gone well, his love that seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More training, more tests from pack members who weren't sure about her yet, more responsibilities she'd never imagined taking on. But tonight, Shannon was exactly where she belonged. She'd been torn apart by claws that belonged to the man she was falling in love with. But in the process, she'd been put back together as someone stronger, wilder, more complete than she'd ever been before. Her wolf stretched contentedly in her mind, and Shannon smiled as she drifted toward sleep. She'd come to these mountains to study wolves, never knowing she was one herself. Now she was home. Chapter 3. Shannon woke before dawn to the sound of howling echoing across the valley. Her enhanced hearing picked up the complex harmonies, some voices celebrating successful hunts, others calling loved ones home, still others simply singing for the joy of being alive under the fading moon. She dressed quickly in the clothes Lydia had brought her the night before, practical jeans, boots, and a sweater that smelled faintly of pack and home. The scents were comforting in a way that surprised her. Downstairs, she found Reece in the kitchen making coffee, his hair still mussed from sleep. The sight of him in the early morning light, relaxed and domestic, made something warm unfurl in her chest. "Good morning," he said, offering her a steaming mug. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Shannon admitted. "Though the howling woke me up." "The dawn chorus," Reece explained. Pack members checking in with each other, making sure everyone made it through the night safely. "You'll start to recognize individual voices soon." Shannon sipped her coffee and savored the way Reece's scent mixed with the morning air. "What's the plan for today?" "Training," he said simply. "Elena wants to run more tests to see how quickly your abilities are developing. Then I'll start teaching you pack history, politics, and protocol. This afternoon, Cole will begin your combat training." "Combat training?" "Being Luna means being able to protect the pack when necessary," Reece said seriously. "You'll need to know how to fight in both forms." The idea of fighting anyone was foreign to Shannon's academic background, but her wolf stirred with interest at the prospect. The predator inside her wanted to test her new strength, to understand the extent of her capabilities. Dr. Luna arrived just as they finished breakfast, carrying her medical bag and wearing the kind of expression that suggested she had important news to share. "The test results from yesterday are fascinating," she said without preamble, settling at the kitchen table. "Shannon, your genetic marker suggests you're not just a dormant shifter, you're from an extremely powerful bloodline." "What does that mean?" Shannon asked. "It means your wolf is likely to be stronger, faster, and more dominant than average. It also means you'll probably develop abilities beyond the normal shifter range." Dr. Luna's eyes sparkled with scientific excitement. "Enhanced healing, extended range of telepathic communication with pack members, possibly even limited precognitive abilities." Reece set down his coffee cup with unusual force. "Elena, you should have tested for that yesterday." "I needed a baseline first," Dr. Luna said defensively. "But now that I know what to look for." She turned back to Shannon. "There are only a few bloodlines that carry these enhanced traits. Most of them died out generations ago." "But apparently not all of them," Shannon said slowly. The implications were staggering. Not only was she a werewolf, she was potentially a very powerful one. "This changes things," Reece said quietly. "Father needs to know immediately." "Know what?" Marcus Blackwood appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression alert despite the early hour. Dr. Luna quickly explained her findings. producing charts and genetic analyses that meant nothing to Shannon but clearly had significant impact on both Marcus and Reece. "Moonkeeper line," Marcus said finally, his voice heavy with recognition. "I should have realized when I saw her wolf form, that auburn coloring is distinctive." "Moonkeeper?" Shannon asked. "One of the original pack founder bloodlines," Marcus explained. "They were the spiritual leaders of our people, the ones who could communicate directly with the moon's power. Most were killed during the Purge 3 centuries ago." "The Purge?" "When humans discovered our existence and tried to eliminate us," Reece said grimly. "It was a dark time. Entire packs were slaughtered, ancient bloodlines lost forever. We spent generations hiding, rebuilding, trying to preserve what knowledge survived." Shannon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "And you think I'm descended from these moonkeepers?" "Almost certainly," Dr. Luna said. "The genetic markers are unmistakable. Shannon, you may be the first moonkeeper born in over 200 years. The weight of that revelation settled over Shannon like a heavy blanket. It was one thing to accept that she was a werewolf, quite another to learn that she might be the heir to some ancient legacy she didn't understand. "What does that mean for the pack?" she asked. Marcus and Reece exchanged a meaningful look. "It means our enemies will want you dead," Marcus said bluntly. "And our allies will want to claim you." The Moonkeeper bloodline was legendary for its power, and the political influence that came with it. "Enemies?" "Other packs, primarily," Reece explained. "Not all werewolves are as peaceful as we try to be. Some believe in dominance through force, in ruling over humans rather than hiding from them. A true moonkeeper could tip the balance of power significantly." Shannon's head was spinning. Yesterday she'd been a wildlife biologist studying wolf behavior. Now she was apparently some kind of supernatural royalty with a target on her back. "I need air," she said abruptly, standing so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. "I need to think." She was out the door before anyone could stop her, her wolf senses automatically guiding her toward the forest trails that led away from the main settlement. Behind her, she could hear Reece and Marcus discussing something in low, urgent voices, but she needed space to process everything she'd just learned. The morning forest was alive with activity. Squirrels chattered in the canopy above, birds called to their mates, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the splash of a beaver working on its dam. The normalcy of it helped calm her racing thoughts. She'd walked for perhaps 15 minutes when her enhanced hearing picked up footsteps behind her. Reece, moving through the forest with the silent grace of someone who'd been doing it his entire life. "I'm not running away," she called without turning around. "I just needed space to think." "I know," he said, falling into step beside her. "This is a lot to process." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following a game trail that wound deeper into the territory. Shannon found herself automatically cataloging scents and sounds, her wolf senses providing a constant stream of information about their surroundings. "Reece," she said finally. "What if I can't do this? What if I'm not strong enough to be what everyone needs me to be?" "Then we'll figure it out together," he said simply. "Shannon, you don't have to carry this burden alone. That's what mates are for, to share the load when it gets too heavy." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Is that what we are? Mates? What do you think?" Shannon considered the question seriously. The supernatural bond between them was undeniable, she could feel it humming in her blood, connecting them in ways that went beyond physical attraction. But underneath that mystical connection was something more recognizable, the growing affection and respect that formed the foundation of any real relationship. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she said honestly. "And that terrifies me almost as much as learning I'm some kind of legendary werewolf." Reece's smile was soft and devastating. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because love makes people do stupid things. It clouds judgment, makes you vulnerable." Shannon looked away, focusing on a hawk circling overhead. "I've spent my whole adult life avoiding serious relationships because I've seen what love can do to people." "And what's that?" "Make them forget who they are. Make them sacrifice their dreams, their independence, their sense of self for someone else. She met his eyes again. I don't want to lose myself in this bond, Reece. I don't want to become just an extension of you. Understanding flickered across his features. Is that what you think the mate bond does? I don't know what it does. That's the problem. Reece was quiet for a long moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. The mate bond doesn't erase who you are, Shannon. It enhances it. It gives you someone who will support your dreams rather than demanding you sacrifice them. Someone who will challenge you to grow rather than asking you to shrink. He stepped closer, his amber eyes intense with sincerity. I don't want you to lose yourself in loving me. I want you to find the best version of yourself through it. And if that version of myself decides to go back to human civilization? To continue my research career instead of playing Pac Luna? Pain flashed across his features, but his voice remained steady. Then I'll support that decision, even if it breaks my heart. The absolute honesty in his words did something to Shannon's carefully constructed defenses. This man, this werewolf, was prepared to let her go if that's what made her happy. It was the opposite of every controlling, possessive relationship she'd ever feared falling into. You really mean that, she said wonderingly. I do. Your happiness matters more to me than my own. That's... Shannon struggled to find words. That's either the most romantic thing I've ever heard or a completely unhealthy approach to relationships. Reece laughed, the sound rich and warm in the morning air. Maybe a little of both. But that's what love is, isn't it? A little crazy, a little risky, completely worth it. Before Shannon could respond, her enhanced hearing picked up something that made her wolf senses snap to attention. Footsteps, moving through the forest with deliberate stealth. Multiple sets of them, approaching from different directions. Reece, she said quietly, her voice sharp with warning. He'd heard it too. His posture shifted instantly from relaxed to alert, his partially shifted senses scanning their surroundings. Strangers, he confirmed. Moving in formation. Hunters? Wrong time of year, wrong movement pattern. Reece's expression darkened. These are wolves. And they're surrounding us. As if summoned by his words, figures began emerging from the trees around them. Men and women in human form, but moving with the predatory grace that marked them as shifters. Shannon counted at least 8, all positioned to cut off potential escape routes. The leader was a tall woman with silver hair and cold blue eyes, wearing clothes that suggested military training. When she smiled, Shannon caught a glimpse of fangs that hadn't fully retracted. Reece Blackwood, the woman said, her voice carrying a slight accent Shannon couldn't place. How fortunate to find you so far from pack protection. Katrina Volkov, Reece replied, his tone carefully neutral. You're trespassing on Blackwood territory. Am I? Katrina's smile widened. How rude of me. But then, I was never known for my manners. Shannon felt Reece tense beside her, and her own wolf responded to the threat by flooding her system with adrenaline. These weren't friendly visitors. What do you want, Katrina? Reece asked, his voice deceptively calm despite the danger surrounding them. Oh, I think you know exactly what I want, Katrina said, her cold gaze shifting to Shannon. Or rather, who I want. Hello, little Moonkeeper. Shannon's blood ran cold. How did you know what you are? Katrina laughed, the sound sharp and predatory. Word travels fast in our world, child. A dormant Moonkeeper awakening after centuries? Such news has a way of reaching interested parties. The Volkov pack, Reece said grimly. I should have known you'd come sniffing around. My father sends his regards, Katrina replied with mock pleasantness. He's very interested in meeting the last of the Moonkeeper line. Particularly since she's currently unprotected. She's under Blackwood protection, Reece growled, his voice dropping to a register that made Shannon's wolf shiver with recognition. Touch her, and you'll have my father's entire pack hunting you. Ah, but we're not on Blackwood territory anymore, are we? Katrina gestured to the surrounding forest. You've wandered quite far from home, young Alpha. And your little mate is still so new, so untrained. It would be a shame if something happened to her before she learned to properly defend herself. Shannon felt a surge of anger at being discussed like she wasn't there. I can defend myself just fine, she said, stepping forward despite Reece's warning hand on her arm. Katrina's eyebrows rose with amusement. Can you now? Shall we test that theory? Before Shannon could respond, one of Katrina's wolves, a large man with scarred hands, lunged toward her with inhuman speed. Shannon's newly awakened instincts took over, and she found herself dropping into a defensive crouch she didn't remember learning. But her inexperience showed. The attacker easily anticipated her movements, his claws raking across her shoulder and drawing blood. Shannon cried out, more from surprise than pain, and the scent of her blood seemed to drive the surrounding wolves into a frenzy. Reece's response was immediate and devastating. He shifted partially, his features becoming more angular as claws extended from his fingertips. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Shannon's attacker and flung him into a nearby tree with enough force to crack the trunk. Enough, he roared, his voice carrying the absolute authority of an alpha's air. This ends now. But Katrina was already signaling her pack. Take them both, she ordered. My father wants the Moonkeeper alive, but he said nothing about her mate. The clearing erupted into chaos. Shannon found herself back-to-back with Reece as wolves in various stages of transformation closed in around them. Her shoulder burned where she'd been clawed, but her wolf was demanding she fight, demanding she prove herself worthy of her mate's protection. Shannon, Reece said urgently without taking his eyes off their attackers. Can you shift? I don't know, she admitted. The transformation the night before had been triggered by pain and pack ritual. She had no idea how to call it consciously. Try. Your wolf knows how to fight, trust her. A female wolf with gray fur launched herself at Shannon, jaws open and aiming for her throat. Shannon threw herself sideways, barely avoiding the attack, and felt something primal surge through her system. Her wolf wanted out, wanted to meet this challenge with fang and claw. The shift began without her conscious decision. Pain lanced through her body as bones began to elongate under form, but this time she didn't fight the transformation. This time, she embraced it. Her shift was faster than the night before, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. When it completed, Shannon found herself in wolf form, her auburn fur bristling with aggression as she faced her attackers. The gray wolf circled her warily, no longer confident now that Shannon had shifted. But before either could attack, Reece's howl split the morning air, a call for help that would carry for miles through pack territory. Clever boy, Katrina said with grudging admiration. But help won't arrive in time. She gestured again, and her wolves moved as a coordinated unit. Shannon found herself separated from Reece, facing 3 attackers while he dealt with the remaining 5. Her wolf snarled, calculating distances and weak points with predatory efficiency. The first attacker, the gray female, came in low, aiming for Shannon's legs. Shannon leaped over her, twisting in midair to land on the wolf's back. Her claws found purchase in gray fur, and she bit down hard on the base of her opponent's neck. The gray wolf yelped and bucked, trying to dislodge her, but Shannon held on grimly. Her inexperience showed in her technique, but her natural strength was already evident. When the gray wolf finally managed to throw her off, Shannon landed gracefully and immediately spun to face the next threat. A brown male was already airborne, aiming for her exposed flank. Shannon tried to dodge, but her timing was off. The male's claws caught her ribs, opening new wounds that sent her stumbling sideways. But before he could follow up his attack, a massive black shape slammed into him from the side. Reece, in full wolf form now, had broken away from his own fights to protect her. Stay close, his voice said in her mind, and Shannon realized with shock that she could hear his thoughts. Don't let them separate us again. The telepathic communication was instinctive, natural as breathing. Shannon wondered briefly if this was one of the Moonkeeper abilities Dr. Luna had mentioned, but there was no time to analyze it now. Working together, they were far more effective than either had been alone. Reece's experience and Shannon's raw power complemented each other perfectly. When a wolf tried to circle behind Shannon, Reece was there to intercept. When two wolves tried to overwhelm Reece with coordinated attacks, Shannon's unexpected strength caught them off guard. But they were still outnumbered, and Shannon could feel her energy flagging. The repeated transformations and extended fighting were taking their toll on her untrained body. "Hold on," Reece's mental voice urged. "I can hear the pack response. They're coming." Indeed, Shannon's enhanced hearing was beginning to pick up the sound of wolves moving through the forest at high speed. The cavalry was en route. Katrina seemed to realize it too. "Enough," she called to her wolves. "We have what we came for." Shannon was confused for a moment. They hadn't been captured, hadn't been taken anywhere. Then she realized what Katrina meant. They had information now. They knew Shannon's current skill level, her strengths and weaknesses. They knew she could shift quickly under stress but tired easily. They knew she could communicate telepathically with her mate. Most importantly, they knew she would fight to protect herself and those she cared about. "Until next time, little Moonkeeper," Katrina called as her pack began to fade back into the forest. "Give my regards to Alpha Marcus. Tell him the Volkov pack remembers old debts." And then they were gone, disappearing into the trees with the same silent efficiency they'd used to surround Shannon and Reece. Shannon shifted back to human form, the transformation leaving her dizzy and weak. She slumped against a nearby tree, breathing hard and trying to process what had just happened. "Are you hurt?" Reece asked, immediately beside her in human form. His hands moved over her body, checking for serious injuries. "Just scratches," Shannon said, though the claw marks on her shoulder and ribs burned like fire. "Reece, who were they? What did Katrina mean about old debts?" "The Volkov pack," Reece said grimly, examining the wounds on her shoulder. "They're from the Russian territories originally, but they've been expanding into North America for the past decade. They believe in werewolf supremacy, that we should rule over humans rather than hide from them." "And the old debts?" "My grandfather killed Katrina's grandfather during a territorial dispute 50 years ago. Apparently, the Volkovs have long memories." The sound of approaching wolves grew louder, and moments later, Marcus burst into the clearing in wolf form, followed by Cole, Jake, and half a dozen other pack members. They shifted to human form as soon as they saw Shannon and Reece were safe. "What happened?" Marcus demanded, his eyes taking in the scattered signs of battle and the blood on Shannon's clothes. Reece quickly explained the encounter while Dr. Luna appeared with her medical bag to tend to Shannon's wounds. As the story unfolded, Marcus's expression grew darker. "They were testing her," he said finally. "Seeing how quickly she could shift, how well she could fight, whether she had developed any of the legendary Moonkeeper abilities." "I could hear Reece's thoughts," Shannon offered. "During the fight, we could communicate telepathically." Dr. Luna's hand stilled on the bandage she was applying. "After only 2 shifts? That's remarkable." "It's also dangerous," Marcus said. "The more abilities you manifest, the more valuable you become to packs like the Volkovs. They'll want to capture you, use your power for their own purposes." Shannon felt a chill of understanding. "I'm not just a target because of my bloodline. I'm a weapon they want to acquire." "Yes," Marcus said bluntly. "But you're also under Blackwood protection now. We won't let them take you." "Can you stop them?" Shannon asked. "If they come in force?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "The Volkov pack is large and well-trained. In open warfare, the outcome would be uncertain." His amber eyes met hers. "But they won't risk open warfare. Too much attention from human authorities. They'll try subtlety first, attempts to lure you away from pack protection, to isolate you as they did today." "So what do we do?" "We accelerate your training," Reece said. "Combat skills, pack politics, you're developing abilities. You need to be able to protect yourself if you're separated from the pack again. And we reach out to our allies," Marcus added. The Volkovs aren't the only ones who will be interested in a Moonkeeper's return. Some packs will want to protect you for the sake of preserving the old bloodlines. Dr. Luna finished bandaging Shannon's wounds and sat back on her heels. There's something else we need to consider, she said carefully. Shannon's abilities are developing much faster than normal. The telepathic communication with Reece, the speed of her shifts, the strength she showed in combat, it's all ahead of schedule. What does that mean? It means her power is growing rapidly. And power that grows too quickly can be unstable. Dr. Luna's expression was troubled. We need to make sure Shannon learns control along with strength. An unstable Moonkeeper could be as dangerous to her own pack as to her enemies. The weight of that possibility settled over Shannon like a heavy blanket. Not only was she a target for enemy packs, she might also be a danger to the people she was learning to love. How do we prevent that? She asked. Training, Reece said immediately. Constant, intensive training until control becomes instinctive. And meditation, Dr. Luna added. Learning to center yourself, to find calm even in the midst of chaos. The old Moonkeeper texts speak of mental disciplines that helped control their power. You have Moonkeeper texts? Shannon asked with scientific interest. Fragments, Marcus said. Incomplete records that survived the purge. Elena has been studying them for years, trying to piece together what was lost. An idea began forming in Shannon's mind. What if that's how I can help? What if my contribution to the pack isn't just fighting or politics, but research? I could study the old texts, try to reconstruct the lost Moonkeeper knowledge. Marcus and Reece exchanged a meaningful look. That could be valuable, Marcus said slowly. The Moonkeepers were the keepers of werewolf history and wisdom. If you could restore some of that knowledge, it would benefit all werewolf packs, not just ours, Dr. Luna finished excitedly. Shannon, you could be the key to recovering centuries of lost culture. The possibility filled Shannon with excitement. This was work she could understand, research she could sink her teeth into. If she had to be a legendary werewolf, at least she could approach it like the scientist she was. Where are these texts? She asked. In the pack archive, Marcus said. A secure facility deeper in our territory. We can begin your research there this afternoon. As they walked back toward the main settlement, Shannon's mind was already racing with possibilities. She had work to do, training to complete, abilities to master, ancient knowledge to recover. It was overwhelming, but for the first time since her transformation began, she felt like she had a clear purpose. The mate bond hummed contentedly between her and Reece as they walked, and Shannon realized something important had shifted during the fight. She wasn't just accepting her new life anymore, she was embracing it. She was going to be the best Luna, the best Moonkeeper, the best mate she could possibly be. And if the Volkovs or anyone else wanted to test her, they would find her ready. Her claws had torn her apart from her old life, but Reece's love, and her own growing strength, was putting her back together as someone entirely new. Someone who could fight for what she loved. Chapter 4. The pack archive was unlike anything Shannon had expected. Hidden beneath the main settlement in a network of natural caves, it housed centuries of werewolf history in climate-controlled chambers carved from living rock. Ancient scrolls shared space with modern computer databases, creating a repository that bridged the gap between old traditions and new technology. It's magnificent, Shannon breathed, running her fingers along leather-bound volumes that were older than the United States. How much of this survived the purge? About 30% of what we once had, Dr. Luna replied, leading her deeper into the archive. The rest was either destroyed by human hunters or lost when pack settlements were abandoned. They stopped before a secured vault where the most precious documents were kept. Marcus input a complex code, and the heavy door swung open to reveal shelves lined with carefully preserved texts. The Moonkeeper archives, he said solemnly. What little remains of your ancestors' work? Shannon approached the shelves with scientific reverence, her enhanced senses picking up the faint scents of old parchment, preserve oil, and something else, something that seemed to resonate with her very DNA. I can smell them, she said wonderingly. The Moonkeepers who wrote these. Their scent is still here, even after centuries. Another manifestation of your abilities, Dr. Luna noted with interest. You're connecting to the genetic memory embedded in these documents. Shannon carefully lifted a leather journal from the shelf, and the moment her fingers touched the cover, images flashed through her mind. A woman with auburn hair similar to her own, standing in moonlight with her arms raised to the sky. Wolves gathered in a circle, their voices raised in harmony with something greater than themselves. Ancient rituals that connected the pack to the very essence of what they were. Shannon? Reece's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? She blinked, realizing she'd been standing frozen for several minutes while visions played in her mind. I saw her, she whispered. The woman who wrote this journal. I saw the ritual she performed. Genetic memory, Dr. Luna said excitedly. The Moonkeeper bloodline carries cellular memories of ancestral knowledge. Shannon, you're not just reading about these rituals, you're remembering them. Over the next few hours, Shannon immersed herself in the archive while Reece and Dr. Luna worked nearby. Each document she touched brought new flashes of memory, fragments of understanding about the role her ancestors had played in werewolf society. The Moonkeepers hadn't just been spiritual leaders, they'd been mediators, healers, and protectors of the ancient laws that governed pack interactions. They could commune directly with the moon's power, drawing strength from lunar cycles to enhance their abilities and those of their pack mates. Look at this, Shannon said, opening a journal to a page covered with intricate diagrams. It's describing a ritual called the Luna's Binding. It was used to strengthen the connection between mates, to allow them to share not just thoughts but actual physical abilities. Reece looked up from his own research. Share abilities? According to this, bonded mates could temporarily transfer skills between each other. A Moonkeeper could share her enhanced healing with her mate, or he could lend her his combat experience. Shannon's excitement grew as she read further. It says the process creates a feedback loop that makes both partners stronger than they could ever be individually. That would explain the remarkable synchronization you two showed during the fight with the Volkovs, Dr. Luna mused. Your natural mate bond may already be developing into something closer to the Luna's Binding. The implications were staggering. If Shannon could master these ancient techniques, she wouldn't just be a powerful individual, she could make the entire pack stronger. But as she continued reading, her excitement was tempered by growing unease. The journal entries spoke of great power, but also of great cost. Several Moonkeepers had burned themselves out attempting rituals beyond their capability. Others had been driven mad by the constant flow of lunar energy through their minds. Reece, she said quietly. Some of these women didn't survive their power. The lunar connection, it consumed them. He was beside her instantly, reading over her shoulder. What exactly happened to them? Shannon translated the archaic text slowly. It says here that Luna's power is like a river, it can nourish the land it flows through, but it can also flood and destroy. A Moonkeeper who can't control the flow. She trailed off, disturbed by the implications. Becomes a danger to herself and everyone around her, Dr. Luna finished grimly. Shannon, this is exactly what I was worried about. Your power is growing so quickly that you might not have time to develop the control necessary to contain it. How long do I have? Shannon asked. Dr. Luna consulted some calculations she'd been working on. Based on the rate your abilities are manifesting, I'd estimate 6 months before the lunar connection becomes too strong to safely contain without proper training. And if I can't master the control techniques by then? The silence that followed was answer enough. Then we make sure you do master them, Reece said firmly. Whatever it takes. Shannon appreciated his confidence, but the weight of responsibility was crushing. Not only did she need to learn werewolf combat and politics, she needed to master techniques that had challenged her ancestors, women who'd been raised in this culture from birth. A soft chime from Dr. Luna's phone interrupted her spiraling thoughts. That's the security alert, Elena said, checking the message. Someone's approaching the archive entrance. Marcus appeared in the vault doorway moments later, his expression serious. We have visitors, he announced. Representatives from 3 different packs, all requesting an audience with Shannon. Which packs? Reece asked, immediately on alert. The Silvermoon pack from British Columbia, the Ironwood pack from Montana, and the Stoneheart pack from Colorado. Marcus's tone suggested these weren't casual social calls. All 3 alphas claim they have information about Moonkeeper history that Shannon needs to hear. Shannon felt a flutter of excitement despite the tension. More information could be invaluable for my research. It could also be a trap, Reece said darkly. The timing is suspicious, coming so soon after the Volkov encounter. My thoughts exactly, Marcus agreed. But refusing to meet with allied packs could be seen as an insult. We need to hear what they have to say, but we'll do it on our terms. An hour later, Shannon found herself in the pack's formal meeting hall, seated beside Reece at a long table while 3 alpha wolves and their entourages faced them. The political dynamics were immediately apparent. Each group was sizing up not just Shannon, but each other. Alpha Catherine Silvermoon spoke first. She was an elegant woman in her 50s with silver-streaked blonde hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. Shannon Blackwood, she said formally. The Silvermoon Pack offers our protection and support as you discover your heritage. We also offer something more valuable, training. What kind of training? Shannon asked. My grandmother was quarter Moonkeeper, Catherine replied. Before she died, she passed down meditation techniques and energy control exercises that have been in our family for generations. Techniques that might help you manage your developing abilities. Alpha James Ironwood, a gruff man with steel-gray hair and scars that spoke of many battles, leaned forward. The Silvermoon techniques are useful, but incomplete, he said bluntly. The Ironwood pack has something better, a Moonkeeper artifact that survived the purge. Shannon's pulse quickened. What kind of artifact? A lunar focus crystal, James replied. Used by Moonkeepers to channel and control lunar energy. It's been in our vault for 2 centuries, waiting for someone with the bloodline to claim it. The 3rd alpha, a young woman named Sarah Stoneheart who couldn't be much older than Shannon herself, smiled with predatory satisfaction. Meditation techniques and crystals are helpful, she said. But what Shannon really needs is first-hand knowledge from someone who's actually practiced Moonkeeper abilities. The hall fell silent. Sarah's implication was clear, she was claiming to have access to a living Moonkeeper. That's impossible, Dr. Luna said. The bloodline died out generations ago. Did it? Sarah's smile widened. Or did some Moonkeepers simply learn to hide their abilities so well that even they forgot what they were? She turned to Shannon. My pack's healer has been experiencing unusual abilities lately. Abilities that started manifesting shortly after news of your awakening spread through the supernatural community. You're suggesting the Moonkeeper awakening is triggering dormant abilities in others? Shannon asked, her scientific mind racing with the implications. I'm stating it as fact, Sarah replied. The return of a true Moonkeeper is awakening bloodlines that have been sleeping for centuries. Within 6 months, there could be dozens of us. The political ramifications were staggering. If multiple Moonkeepers emerged, it would fundamentally alter the balance of power in werewolf society. Packs with Moonkeeper members would become regional powers overnight. What exactly are you all proposing? Marcus asked, his alpha instincts clearly recognizing the potential threat to his pack's independence. Alliance, Catherine said immediately. Formal treaties that would give Shannon access to our resources while ensuring the Silvermoon pack shares in the benefits of her growing power. Partnership, James countered. A joint training program that would allow Shannon to master her abilities while strengthening ties between our packs. Integration, Sarah said boldly. Shannon should come to Stoneheart territory to train with our emerging Moonkeeper. Together, they could rediscover abilities that have been lost for centuries. The offers hung in the air like competing claims on Shannon's future. She could feel the tension between the alphas, the careful political maneuvering that disguised more aggressive territorial instincts. These are generous offers, Shannon said diplomatically. But I need time to consider them. Time is a luxury you may not have, Sarah said urgently. The longer you delay your training, the greater the risk of losing control. And if the Volkovs move against you before you're fully prepared? The Volkovs won't move against anyone under Blackwood protection, Marcus said firmly, his alpha authority filling the room. Are you certain? James asked pointedly. The Volkov pack has been expanding aggressively. They've already absorbed 2 smaller packs this year, and their numbers are growing. If they decide Shannon is valuable enough to risk open warfare, then we'll be ready for them, Reece said, his voice carrying the dangerous edge that marked him as his father's heir. But Shannon could see the doubt in Marcus's eyes, the calculation of odds that didn't favor their relatively small pack against the Volkov forces. The visiting alphas could see it too, and they pressed their advantages accordingly. The Blackwood pack is strong, Catherine said carefully. But strength has its limits. An alliance with Silvermoon would double your defensive capabilities. Partnership with Ironwood would give you access to our mountain fortifications, James added. Positions that have never fallen to enemy attack. And training with our emerging Moonkeeper could unlock abilities that would make any attack meaningless, Sarah finished. Shannon felt the weight of their expectations, their political calculations, their barely disguised hunger for the power she represented. These weren't just offers of help, they were attempts to acquire influence over her developing abilities. I appreciate all of your offers, she said finally. But any decisions about my training or alliances will be made by me, in consultation with my mate and my alpha. I won't be bartered like a political asset. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Alpha Stoneheart's smile became sharp-edged, while the other's expressions grew more carefully neutral. Of course, Catherine said smoothly. We would never presume to make decisions for you. We simply want to ensure you have all the information necessary to choose wisely. Information that could save your life, James added bluntly. The Volkovs aren't the only threat you'll face. There are older things in the world than werewolf packs, Shannon. Things that have been waiting for a Moonkeeper to emerge. What kind of things? Shannon asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. Vampires who remember the old days, when Moonkeepers could command lunar power to drive them from werewolf territory, Sarah said. Fake courts that lost territory when the Moonkeepers enforced the ancient treaties. Demons that were bound by Moonkeeper magic and have been seeking revenge for centuries. The supernatural world suddenly seemed much larger and more dangerous than Shannon had imagined. You're saying my very existence makes me a target for multiple supernatural species? We're saying you need allies, James replied. Powerful ones. The Blackwood pack is admirable, but they're not equipped to handle threats on that scale. Shannon looked at Marcus and Reece, seeing the truth they were trying to hide. The Blackwood pack was indeed strong, but they were a regional power at best. Against the kind of ancient enemies James was describing, they would be overwhelmed. But accepting help from these visiting packs would come with strings attached. Political obligations that could compromise her independence and put her in debt to alphas whose true motivations she didn't fully understand. I need to discuss this with my pack, she said firmly. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow. The visiting alphas exchanged glances, clearly not pleased with the delay, but they had little choice but to accept it. As they filed out of the meeting hall, Shannon caught fragments of their whispered conversations, speculation about her power level, concerns about Blackwood influence, plans for alternative approaches if their offers were rejected. When they were finally alone, Marcus slumped in his chair with uncharacteristic weariness. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said. Shannon, your emergence as a Moonkeeper has upset the balance of power that's existed for decades. Every pack in North America will want to claim you as an ally or eliminate you as a threat. What do you think I should do? Shannon asked. Honestly? I don't know, Marcus admitted. These offers have merit, you do need training that we can't provide, and allies we don't currently have. But accepting help from any of these packs will put you in their debt, and political debts have a way of becoming chains. There might be another option, Reece said thoughtfully. What if we don't choose between them? What if we create a council? Explain, Marcus said. Instead of allying with one pack, we invite representatives from all of them to establish a Moonkeeper Council, Reece continued. Shannon gets access to their combined knowledge and resources, but no single pack gains political control over her training. Shannon felt a spark of excitement at the idea. A research consortium, essentially. Each pack contributes what they can in exchange for sharing in whatever knowledge I recover. It's risky, Marcus warned. Balancing that many competing interests could be like juggling knives. But it might be the only way to maintain independence while getting the help I need, Shannon said. And if there really are other Moonkeepers awakening, a council structure could accommodate them too. Dr. Luna, who had been quietly taking notes throughout the discussion, looked up with approval. It's actually quite brilliant, she said. Instead of trying to control individual Moonkeepers, the packs would be incentivized to support their collective development. The visiting alphas won't like it, Reece pointed out. They came here expecting to negotiate exclusive deals. Then they'll have to adapt, Shannon said with growing confidence. I'm not a prize to be won or a weapon to be claimed. I'm a person with abilities that could benefit everyone, and that's how this is going to work. Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. Spoken like a true Luna, he said with pride. Very well. Tomorrow we present your counterproposal. But Shannon, you need to understand, not everyone will accept this arrangement peacefully. Some packs will see it as a threat to their ambitions. Then they'll find out exactly what a Moonkeeper is capable of when she's defending her freedom, Shannon replied. The mate bond hummed with Reece's approval and love, and Shannon felt a surge of confidence that had nothing to do with supernatural power. She was learning to navigate this new world on her terms, building alliances without surrendering her independence. Her claws might have torn her old life apart, but she was building something stronger from the pieces, a future where she could be both powerful and free, both connected to her pack and true to herself. The moon was rising outside the meeting hall windows, and Shannon could feel its pull more strongly than ever before. But instead of frightening her, the lunar connection felt like coming into her birthright. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 5. The full moon hung like a silver coin against the velvet sky, and Shannon could feel its power calling to something deep in her bones. 3 weeks had passed since the visiting alphas had reluctantly agreed to the Moonkeeper Council proposal, and tonight marked her first attempt at one of the most dangerous rituals described in the ancient texts. Are you certain about this? Reece asked for the third time as they walked toward the ceremonial clearing. The journal entries about the Luna's binding are fragmentary at best. We don't know all the risks. We know the risks of not trying, Shannon replied, adjusting the leather satchel that contained the lunar focus crystal Alpha Ironwood had reluctantly provided. My power levels have been spiking with each moon cycle. Dr. Luna's measurements show I'm approaching the threshold where the energy becomes uncontainable. They'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. Shannon had practiced the meditation techniques Alpha Silverman's grandmother had preserved, studied every fragment of Moonkeeper ritual they could find, and worked with Sarah Stonehart's emerging Moonkeeper, a young woman named Maria whose abilities were developing almost as rapidly as Shannon's own. But tonight, she would attempt something none of them had tried, the Luna's binding ritual that would permanently connect her power to Reece's strength, creating a feedback loop that could either stabilize her abilities or destroy them both. The ceremonial clearing had been prepared according to the ancient specifications. White stones formed a perfect circle, with smaller circles of silver and obsidian nested within. Candles marked the cardinal directions, their flames dancing in the night breeze. At the center lay an altar carved from a single piece of moonstone, its surface gleaming with inner light. Dr. Luna waited beside the altar with monitoring equipment that looked distinctly out of place among the mystical trappings. Your baseline readings are higher than I've ever recorded, she said, checking her instruments. Shannon, if this doesn't work. It will work, Shannon said with more confidence than she felt. It has to. Marcus, Cole, and several other pack members formed a protective circle around the clearing. They'd learned from the Volkov encounter that Shannon was most vulnerable during ritual work, when her attention was focused inward rather than on external threats. "The moon reaches its zenith in 15 minutes, Dr. Luna announced. "According to the texts, that's when lunar energy will be strongest." Shannon nodded and began removing items from her satchel. The focus crystal came first, a piece of naturally formed quartz that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. Next came a silver knife with symbols etched along its blade, followed by small vials of herbs and oils whose purposes she'd had to reconstruct from fragmentary references. "The binding requires blood," she said, looking at Reece. "Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since the moment I met you," he replied simply. They moved to the center of the circle, and Shannon felt the lunar energy begin to build around them. It started as a gentle pressure, like the weight of deep water, but with each passing minute it grew stronger. Her skin began to glow with a faint silver light that seemed to emanate from within. "Shannon," Dr. Luna called urgently. "Your energy readings are spiking faster than expected. You need to begin the ritual now." Shannon picked up the crystal, and immediately felt the lunar power focus through it like sunlight through a magnifying glass. The sensation was intoxicating. Pure power flowing through her veins, whispering promises of abilities beyond imagination. "Don't lose yourself," she reminded herself firmly. "Control the power, don't let it control you." She began the ritual chant in the ancient language the genetic memories had taught her, words that felt older than civilization. As she spoke, the crystal's glow intensified, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently of the flickering candle flames. Reece joined his voice to hers when the chant called for it, his deeper tones harmonizing with her words in ways that made the very air shimmer. The mate bond between them blazed to life, visible now as silver threads of energy that connected their hearts. "The blood binding," Shannon whispered, picking up the ritual knife. She drew the blade across her palm, letting droplets of blood fall onto the moonstone altar. The moment her blood touched the stone, the entire clearing erupted with silver light so bright that the watching pack members had to shield their eyes. Reece took the knife without hesitation, adding his blood to hers on the altar. The moment their blood mingled, Shannon felt something fundamental shift in the space between them. The mate bond didn't just connect them anymore, it became a conduit for power unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She could feel Reece's strength flowing into her, steady and grounding as mountain stone. In return, her lunar power flowed into him, wild and free as moonlight on water. But instead of overwhelming either of them, the exchange created perfect balance. "It's working," Dr. Luna breathed, her instruments showing energy readings that stabilized rather than spiked out of control. But as Shannon reached for the ritual's final component, a silver circlet that would seal the binding permanently, the clearing was suddenly filled with the howls of approaching wolves. "Volkovs," Marcus snarled, his voice carrying across the clearing. "They've found us." "How many?" Reece asked, though he remained in the ritual circle, understanding that breaking the binding now could be catastrophic. 24, at least, Cole reported from his position at the clearing's edge. "They're surrounding us." Shannon felt panic threatened to break her concentration, but the steady flow of Reece's calm strength through their emerging bond helped her focus. "I need 3 more minutes to complete the binding," she said. "Then you'll have them," Marcus declared, beginning his own shift to wolf form. "Pack family, defend the ritual." The clearing erupted into chaos as Blackwood wolves met Volkov attackers at the perimeter. Shannon could hear the sounds of combat, snarls, howls, the crack of bodies colliding, but she forced herself to focus on the circlet in her hands. The silver band was inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the moonlight. As she lifted it toward her head, she could feel the ritual reaching its climax. Power beyond imagination was within her grasp, but so was the possibility of total destruction if anything went wrong. "Shannon!" Reece's urgent shout made her look up to see Katrina Volkov herself breaking through the defensive line, heading straight for the ritual circle with murder in her eyes. Time seemed to slow as Katrina launched herself at Shannon, claws extended and fangs bared. Shannon knew she could dodge, could defend herself, but doing so would break the ritual's focus and likely cause a catastrophic backlash of lunar energy. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She completed the ritual. As the silver circlet settled onto her brow, the Luna's binding reached completion in a blaze of silver fire that swept outward from the altar like a shockwave. Katrina's attack was caught mid-leap, the Volkov Alpha frozen in the air as if time itself had stopped. But Shannon barely noticed. She was too overwhelmed by the sensation of perfect unity with Reece, of power that was wild but controllable, strong but stable. The dangerous edge that had threatened to consume her was gone, channeled instead through their bond into something sustainable. When the silver fire faded, Katrina crashed to the ground outside the ritual circle, unconscious but breathing. Around the clearing, the other Volkov wolves were in similar states, alive but incapacitated by the ritual's completion. "What did you do?" Dr. Luna asked in amazement, her instruments showing energy readings unlike anything she'd ever recorded. "The binding worked," Shannon said, still feeling somewhat disconnected from her physical form. "But it did more than just stabilize my power. It pacified the aggressive impulses in anyone within its range." "A peace binding," Reece said wonderingly. "The texts mentioned them, but I thought they were myths." Marcus, still in wolf form, padded over to sniff at the unconscious Katrina. When he shifted back to human form, his expression was thoughtful. "They're not hurt, just calm. Their aggressive instincts have been temporarily suppressed." "How long will it last?" Shannon asked. "According to the fragments I remember, a few hours for most wolves," Dr. Luna said. "But Shannon, what you just accomplished, it's supposed to be impossible without decades of training." Shannon looked down at her hands, which still glowed faintly with residual power. The overwhelming energy that had threatened to consume her was gone, replaced by something manageable but still incredibly strong. More importantly, she could feel Reece's presence in her mind like a constant, comforting warmth. "Are you all right?" His mental voice was clearer than it had ever been. "Better than all right," she replied through their bond. "I feel complete." The visiting alphas who had remained for the ritual emerged from their hiding places, their expressions ranging from awe to calculation. Shannon could see them reassessing her potential value, measuring the implications of what they'd just witnessed. "The peace binding hasn't been successfully performed in over 300 years, Alpha Silvermoon said, her voice filled with scientific fascination. "Shannon, you've just recovered one of the most significant lost abilities of your bloodline. And demonstrated why the Moonkeepers were so respected," Alpha Ironwood added. "A power that can pacify aggression rather than escalate it, that's exactly what our world needs." But it was Alpha Stoneheart who voiced what they were all thinking. "The other supernatural communities will have felt that power surge," she said grimly. "Every vampire, fae, and demon within 100 miles knows there's an active Moonkeeper in these mountains now." The implications hit Shannon like a physical blow. In successfully completing the binding, she'd announced her presence to every supernatural entity in the region. The days of hiding her abilities, of keeping a low profile while she learned control, were over. "How long before they start arriving?" Marcus asked. "Hours, at most," Sarah replied. "The peace binding creates a unique energy signature that older supernaturals will recognize immediately." Dr. Luna was already packing her equipment with practiced efficiency. "We need to get Shannon back to pack territory immediately. The ceremonial clearing is too exposed for what's coming." But as they began to withdraw, Shannon felt something that made her pause. Through her enhanced connection to the lunar power, she could sense other energy signatures responding to the binding's completion. Not threats, but welcomes. "Wait," she said, holding up a hand. "There's something else. I can feel other Moonkeepers awakening." "How many?" Reece asked urgently. Shannon closed her eyes, extending her newly enhanced senses as far as they would reach. The sensation was like feeling ripples spreading across a vast lake, each one representing another dormant bloodline coming to life. "Dozens," she whispered. "Maybe more. The binding didn't just stabilize my power, it sent out a call that's awakening every Moonkeeper bloodline in North America." The political ramifications were staggering. Within days, there could be dozens of newly awakened Moonkeepers scattered across the continent, all of them as powerful and potentially unstable as Shannon had been. "This changes everything," Marcus said grimly. "We're not just dealing with one Moonkeeper anymore. We're looking at the potential return of an entire supernatural class that's been extinct for centuries. And every pack, every supernatural entity, is going to want to claim them," Alpha Silvermoon added. "The balance of power that's existed since the Purge is about to be completely overturned." Shannon felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She wasn't just responsible for her own power anymore, she was apparently the catalyst for a supernatural awakening that could reshape their entire world. But as she looked at Reece, at the pack members who had risked their lives to protect her ritual, at the unlikely allies who had come together to support her development, Shannon felt a surge of determination that had nothing to do with lunar power. If newly awakened Moonkeepers were going to need guidance, she would provide it. If supernatural entities wanted to exploit or eliminate them, she would stand in their way. If the werewolf world was about to change forever, she would help ensure those changes served the greater good rather than the ambitions of the powerful. The Luna's binding had given her more than just control over her abilities, it had given her the stability and confidence to embrace her role as a leader. Not just of the Blackwood pack, but potentially of an entire generation of Moonkeepers who would look to her for guidance. "Ready for whatever comes next?" Reece asked through their bond, his mental voice warm with love and confidence in her abilities. "More than ready," Shannon replied, taking his hand as they walked back toward pack territory. "Let's go change the world." The moon continued its journey across the sky, its silver light blessing the path ahead of them. Behind them, the Volkov wolves were beginning to stir, their aggressive instincts slowly returning but tempered now by the memory of perfect peace. And across the continent, ancient bloodlines were awakening to powers they'd never known they possessed, all of them connected now by the silver threads of lunar energy that Shannon had woven into the fabric of their world. The age of the Moonkeepers had begun again, and Shannon Blackwood stood at its center, torn apart by destiny and put back together by love, ready to guide her people into an uncertain but hopeful future. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so you never miss another paranormal romance library story.